Welcome to another deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Whether you're maybe prepping for a complex strategic meeting or trying to catch up on some heavy reading or, you're just driven by this intense curiosity about how the world fundamentally operates.
Which is probably why you're here.
Exactly. We are exploring something today that really sits at the bedrock of human thought. Our mission for this deep dive takes us into some ancient biblical wisdom. Specifically, we're going to be analyzing chapter 4 of the book of Proverbs.
Right, and we've got a lot of ground to cover.
We do. Our goal today is to briskly summarize this profound text, discuss how you can actually apply it to modern life, and we want to do that in the first half of our time.
So under 9 minutes or so?
Yep, keep it moving. And then we're going to spend the rest of the deep dive exploring a really vital question, which is, how can this information strengthen our trust and our relationship with God?
It's a fantastic agenda. And just to give some context right up front, the book of Proverbs is essentially a masterclass in the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
And chapter 4 is structurally very unique. It's traditionally attributed to Solomon, but it doesn't read like a royal decree or some detached philosophical treatise.
Right, it feels much more personal.
Exactly. It's framed as an intimate transmission of knowledge from a father to a son. He's actually recounting the lessons he once received from his own father.
So we're looking at a multi-generational chain of wisdom here.
Yeah, a deeply personal survival guide that's just been passed down through the ages.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm.
The chapter opens with this really demanding directive. It says, "Hear ye, children, the instruction of a father, and attend to no understanding."
It's urgent.
Very urgent. It quickly doubles down on that urgency, too. It says, get wisdom, get understanding, forget it not. And then wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom.
Which is an interesting phrasing.
It is, because I feel like today we often treat wisdom as almost like a byproduct of aging.
Just something that happens to you.
Right, something that passively accumulates while you just live your life. But the text treats it as this critical asset that you have to aggressively hunt for.
Well, that urgency makes complete sense when we look at the original Hebrew concept of wisdom being used here. The word is chokmah.
Chokmah.
Yeah. And in the ancient Near East, chokmah wasn't about, abstract intellectualism or passing a theology exam. It was originally used to describe the highly skilled craftsmanship of artisans.
Oh, like the people building things.
Exactly. The people who carved wood or cut stone to build the tabernacle. So wisdom in this context is the applied skill of living.
I love that, the applied skill of living.
And in those ancient societies, transferring the skill to the next generation wasn't just some nice cultural tradition. It was a matter of survival.
Because the stakes were so high.
Right. If a parent didn't prepare a young person to navigate the social, ethical, and economic realities of the world, it wasn't just a philosophical failure. It was existential. You needed those blueprints from people who had lived longer.
And there is such an intense friction there with our modern ethos, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we live in a culture that totally idolizes disruption.
Move fast and break things.
Yes, that exact rallying cry. We prioritize raw, unseasoned innovation over inherited stability. We are completely drowning in information, but we seem entirely starved for actual chokmah.
We really are. We rely on algorithms and search engines to guide us.
Fragmented hot takes instead of seeking out deep, tested mentorship. And these opening verses serve as a really sharp critique of that mindset. They argue that attempting to build a life without studying the blueprints of those who have successfully navigated the terrain before us is basically an act of pure arrogance.
It's the difference between memorizing a map and actually knowing how to hike the trail. The text explicitly commands the reader to love her, to exalt her, and embrace her, personifying wisdom as a partner.
It requires action.
A lifelong, intentional pursuit. You don't just inherit wisdom through osmosis. You have to interrogate your mentors. You have to dissect historical texts and consciously choose to integrate those ethical frameworks into your own life.
Which flows directly into what I think is the central architectural feature of this chapter, found right around verses 10 through 19. It's this profound, stark metaphor of the two paths.
The contrast there is incredible.
It really is. Verse 18 describes the path of wisdom, saying, "But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day."
And then the alternative.
Yeah, the alternative is incredibly bleak. Verse 19 warns, "The way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble.
What's fascinating here is the teleological framework behind this.
Explain what you mean by that.
It's the idea that every choice has a trajectory and a final destination. Ancient writers use this journey metaphor to illustrate that moral momentum is a real thing.
Oh, wow.
Notice the physics of light in that first description. The path of the basic doesn't just start at high noon. It starts like the dawn. It's an incremental illumination.
So it builds over time.
Right. You make one sound ethical choice and the landscape becomes slightly more visible. You act with integrity and the next step is clearer. Conversely, the path of the wicked isn't just dark, it's blinding.
That phrase, "they know not at what they stumble," is hauntingly relevant for us today.
It really is.
Think about the modern phenomenon of algorithmic radicalization, or even just the daily habit of doom scrolling.
Nobody sets out to ruin their own mental health.
Exactly. You don't set out to become deeply cynical or isolated.
Yeah.
But you make one micro choice to engage with outrage-driven content, and that leads to another and another. And before long, your entire digital and mental environment is obscured by this heavy negative static.
And your relationships suffer.
Your anxiety spikes, and you are constantly stumbling, getting bruised by life, without having any idea that the path you chose is what turned the lights off in the first place.
The psychology of habits mirrors this perfectly. We frequently attribute our life's current state, like a sudden career failure or a fractured relationship, to singular catastrophic events.
We want a big, dramatic reason.
Right. But Proverbs dismantles that illusion. You arrive in the darkness through 1,000 unexamined tiny steps off the main road. The wickedness described in these ancient texts isn't always cartoonish villainy.
It's not usually the supervillain plot.
No, often it's just the steady accumulation of selfish, expedient shortcuts that slowly degrade a person's structural integrity. And eventually they just collapse under the pressure.
So if the trajectory of our lives is shaped by these accumulating daily choices, the immediate question for the listener is, what governs those choices?
The control room.
Right. Verses 20 through 23 address this directly. Verse 23 states, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life."
To really grasp the weight of that command, we have to strip away our modern romanticized view of the word heart.
Because we tend to use it for fleeting emotions or sentimental feelings, like Valentine's Day.
Exactly. But in biblical Hebrew, the word is lev, and it encompasses the intellect, the will, the emotions, and the conscience.
It's everything.
It is the absolute seat of human consciousness. And that phrase, issues of life, can actually be translated as the wellspring or the source.
So if the reservoir is poisoned, every stream of water that flows into the city is going to carry that toxin.
That is the perfect analogy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, especially when we look at the historical context of the author. We're reading the words of Solomon,
Right.
historically renowned as the wisest man to ever live. Yet if you look at the broader historical narrative in the book of 1 Kings, Solomon's later life was an absolute disaster.
It's tragic, really.
It is. Despite his immense intellectual wisdom, he failed to guard his own heart. He made countless political compromises, accumulated wealth at the expense of his people, and allowed his foreign marriages to slowly draw his devotion away from God.
That historical irony actually proves the exact thesis of verse 23. Raw intelligence cannot save you. A vast vocabulary or strategic brilliance means absolutely nothing if the central command center, the lev, is compromised. Solomon had the ultimate map, but he fell asleep at the wheel.
Guarding the heart is an active, militant posture.
You have to treat your inner life like a fortress. And in a modern context, we are subjected to a relentless siege of media, advertising, cultural pressures. Guarding your heart today means running a ruthless inventory on what you allow to shape your desires.
We really have to ask ourselves some highly uncomfortable questions. What assumptions about success, power, and human value are we internalizing from our environment?
We can't passively consume cynicism.
Right, an endless stream of vanity and materialism, and then expect our wellspring to suddenly produce courage and empathy when a crisis hits. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy actually relies on a very similar premise.
Oh, how so?
Well, CBT teaches that our core beliefs generate our automatic thoughts, which in turn dictate our behavior. The ancient text is simply demanding that we take responsibility for the gate leading to those core beliefs.
And that level of vigilance requires an almost painful degree of focus, which the text immediately addresses in the concluding verses of the chapter.
Right, verses 24 through 27.
They provide the tactical execution for everything we've discussed so far. Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil.
The imagery there is so vivid, it's like a traveler navigating a treacherous mountain pass.
Yeah, where one wrong step is fatal.
In an environment like that, peripheral vision is actually dangerous. If you turn your head to look at a distraction on the cliffside, your center of gravity naturally shifts and your feet just follow your gaze.
And we live in an attention economy that is explicitly designed to pull our gaze to the right and to the left every single second.
Every single second of the day. Maintaining this kind of tunnel vision for our moral and ethical values is an act of profound rebellion against a culture of perpetual distraction.
Focusing straight before thee requires defining a fixed point on the horizon. If you don't know what your foundational values are, you will inevitably drift toward whatever happens to be the loudest voice in the room.
Which is usually a screen.
Usually a screen, yeah. And pondering the path of your feet means slowing down that space between a stimulus and your response. Asking yourself, does this conversation, does this business deal, does this habit align with the path of the just, or is this a shortcut into the dark?
Okay, so we've examined the mechanics of this wisdom. We've talked about seeking intergenerational knowledge, recognizing the compounding nature of our choices, fiercely guarding our inner motives, and maintaining relentless focus.
We've covered a lot of ground quickly.
We promised we'd be brisk. But the ultimate destination of this ancient roadmap is not just to have a well-managed, highly optimized life.
No, it goes much deeper than that.
Exactly. And this brings us to the core layer of our analysis today. So what does this all mean for us spiritually? How does engaging in this disciplined pursuit of wisdom fundamentally alter our trust and our relationship with God?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, walking the path described in Proverbs 4 is really an exercise in profound spiritual surrender.
Surrender, that's a strong word.
It is, but think about the default setting of human nature. It's autonomy. We inherently want to trust our own instincts, our own desires, and our own ability to navigate the dark. We want to be the architects of our own reality.
Right, we want to be in charge.
When the text warns us to avoid the path of wicked men, the ones who eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence, it's describing the ultimate end of self-will. It's a place where power and self-gratification become the only operating principles. So choosing the path of the just is an admission that our internal compass is fundamentally flawed without divine calibration.
And that surrender is incredibly difficult because it demands we abandon expediency. The dark path often looks faster.
It always looks faster.
It offers immediate wealth, quick social validation, and the illusion of total control. When we deliberately halt our momentum, when we turn from it and pass away, as verse 15 instructs, we are making a radical declaration of trust.
We're betting our lives on a different system entirely.
Yes, we are betting that God's architecture for human flourishing, even when it requires intense discipline, patience, and delayed gratification, is superior to our own improvisations.
That is exactly how relational trust is forged. It's not built through abstract theological agreement. It's built through lived reliance.
Lived reliance.
Every single time you face a professional dilemma where, say, a slight deception would guarantee a win and you choose the slower, honest route because you are keeping your eyes right on, you are interacting with the divine order.
You are trusting the law of the Father over the impulse of the ego.
Precisely.
And let's bring that back to the concept of the lev, the heart. We establish that the heart is the command center of the will and the intellect. If that center is clogged with the debris of unchecked ambition or bitterness or endless digital noise, our capacity to perceive God is severely blunted.
We just can't hear anything over the static.
Guarding the heart is essentially about preserving our spiritual receptivity. We cannot hear the quiet direction of divine wisdom if our internal environment is chaotic. By cultivating humility and actively filtering out toxic influences, we're actually preparing the soil for a deeper connection with the Creator.
And that's when the relationship becomes reciprocal. We see this vividly in the promise that if we forsake not wisdom, she shall preserve thee, love her, and she shall keep thee.
It's a promise of protection.
When you trust the guardrails established by God, you begin to actually experience the preservation the text promises. You avoid the relational wreckage that comes from an unbridled temper. You avoid the financial or legal disasters that stem from greed.
Because you stayed on the path.
Right, and experiencing that preservation in real time is what transforms theoretical faith into unshakable confidence. You realize these ancient boundaries were never meant to restrict your joy. They were meticulously designed to protect your freedom.
That metaphor of the dawn breaking, the shining light getting brighter and brighter, is the perfect illustration of this evolving intimacy. At the beginning of the journey, stepping onto the path of wisdom feels like a leap in the dark.
You're operating purely on the inherited trust of the generations before you.
Exactly. You're just taking their word for it. But as you walk, the light begins to expose the reality of your surroundings. You start to see the hidden dangers on the roadside that you managed to avoid because you followed the map. You begin to understand the complex, beautiful interconnectedness of a life lived with integrity.
And the clarity itself becomes the evidence of God's goodness. When the text notes that the wicked stumble in the dark without knowing why, it's revealing the terror of a life detached from divine truth. It's total epistemic confusion.
Meaningless chaos.
Yes. When tragedy strikes or plans fail on the dark path, there is no framework to process the suffering. But the path of the just offers structural stability. Even when the traveler faces severe storms or treacherous terrain, they know their feet are established on solid rock.
That deep-seated peace is really the ultimate hallmark of a mature relationship with God.
It changes everything.
It reorients our entire understanding of obedience. It is no longer a grim, white-knuckled adherence to a set of ancient rules just to appease a distant deity. It becomes a dynamic partnership.
We want to walk with him.
We guard our hearts and fix our eyes forward, not out of fear of punishment, but out of a deep desire to stay aligned with the source of life itself. The multi-generational chain we discussed at the very beginning, the father pleading with the son to retain his words, is ultimately a reflection of God's posture toward humanity.
It's a reflection of love.
It is the fierce, protective love of a creator pleading with his creation to stay in the light.
This raises an important question, though, as we look to wrap this up.
What's that?
Well, we have spent a great deal of time discussing how we must acquire this wisdom, how we must guard our own hearts, and how we must walk the path to deepen our own trust in God. But if this wisdom was handed from a grandfather to a father and from a father to a son, it implies a terrifying and beautiful responsibility for us.
We have to pass it on.
Yes. The ultimate goal of the shining light is not merely our own personal enlightenment. At some point on this journey, the sun rises high enough that we have to cast our own light for those stumbling behind us. Wisdom isn't fully realized until you transition from the student desperately seeking the blueprints to the mentor handing them down.
You stop being just a consumer of the light and you become a transmitter of it.
Exactly.
We are not just walking the path. We are responsible for maintaining the road for the next generation. We've explored the profound depths of Proverbs 4 today. From the rigorous discipline of ancient Chokmah to the slow algorithmic creep of the dark path, and finally to the beautiful, illuminating reality of spiritual surrender. The blueprints have been laid out on the table for you. The friction of the modern world is actively pulling at your attention, but the path of the just is waiting. How will you apply this information in your life?